Hi everyone, I am SHIBA, your Senior High Introductory Business Assistant. In this episode, we examine the nature and concept of management. Specifically, we'll be talking about the definition and functions of management, the evolution of management theories, and the functions, roles, and skills of a manager. Hopefully, by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to discuss the meaning and functions of management, explain the various types of management theories, and explain the functions, roles, and skills of a manager. So, let's get this show on the road! The word management comes from the Latin word manus, which means hand. When applied as a verb, it can also mean to handle. Specifically, management comes from manegiare? I'm probably murdering that pronunciation. So, this word literally means to handle a horse. Now, when we say the handling of the horse, it's not just controlling the horse when we're riding it, but manegiare actually extends to the whole art and science of growing the horse, feeding the horse, training the horse, and eventually making it an extension of your body. This was, of course, important in the old days both for economic transactions and for warfare. After a while, the Romans used the word manegiare as a catch-all term for the administration of all kinds of affairs. Eventually, the word manage came to mean horsemanship, but we don't use it in that context anymore since the word manage for us means a completely different thing entirely. As for the modern definition of management, many authors over the years have offered up many different definitions. Let's run through a few of them. Management is the process of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling the efforts of organization members and of using all other organizational resources to achieve stated organizational goals. That's a definition given to us by Stoner in 1993. Management is the process of coordinating and integrating work activities so that they are completed efficiently and effectively with and through other people. That definition was given by Robbins and Coulter in 2001. Management is the process of deciding the best way to use an organization's resources to produce goods and provide services. That's a definition given by Gilliard in 2014. Management is the process of working with and through others to achieve organizational objectives in a changing environment. That definition was given to us by Kreitner in 2010. Now, one thing you will notice is that none of those definitions state two terms that people normally associate the word management with, and those words are profit and business. See? Look at those definitions. Nope, no profit or business there. But there are key terms there that seem to appear in all of the definitions. Those terms include organization, objectives, people, and their synonyms. There's a key insight there. What this is telling us is that the lessons and tenets of organization and management isn't something that's only applicable for businesses. They're applicable for organizations in general. A business is, of course, one example of an organization, but organizations include profit or non-profit organizations, governments, clubs, or even things like families, school plays, or the activities of a group project in school. For as long as there's an organization made up of many people, and all of those people have to band together to achieve certain objectives, whether those objectives are for monetary profit or not, management will always be needed. So in summary, management is planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling an organization, pooling the collective resources and human efforts of the organization, and deciding the best way to use all of that to achieve the organization's collective objectives. In these definitions, you can basically see the functions of management. The functions of management are, namely, planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling. Planning, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. Planning, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. Planning, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. Knowing those 5 functions of management is essential to any business or management student, and you should learn those 5 functions to heart if you want to be worth your salt as a manager. So, planning involves the process of setting the organization's objectives and deciding the best way to achieve them. Organizing is the process of identifying, subdividing, grouping, assigning, and coordinating activities. Staffing is the process of recruitment, selection, assignment, training, and development of human resources needed in the various tasks of the organization. Leading is the process of communicating with, influencing, and guiding people in their various tasks. Controlling is the process of monitoring performances, evaluating actions, and taking corrective actions if needed to make sure that the objectives of the organization are achieved. Now, I know I'm running through these functions very quickly, but please know that all these functions are, in essence, processes. Like any process, they're all step-by-step activities. Don't worry, we'll run through each of these functions one at a time in future episodes. In fact, one episode each will be dedicated to each of those functions later. The ideas in management And the study of management wasn't always what it is now. It used to be very different back then, and for us to understand what management is now, it always pays to see what it used to be. How exactly did the modern study of management evolve to what it is now? As a systematic study, management is fairly new. But of course, management as an activity has been around for a long time. The evolution of societies, governments, and countries? Yep, all management. Many things in history have been built through management. See the pyramids, for example. You can't exactly build something like that without proper management, now can you? We can mainly trace the evolution of the study of management as follows: universal management theory, scientific management theory, behavioral management theory, contingency management theory, and the contemporary management theory. The modern study of management, of course, like most other sciences, has its own designated father. For management, it's sometimes considered to be Henry Fayol, the forerunner of the universal management theory. Fayol published his French book, but when translated to English, the title of the book is Industrial and General Administration. Fayol was a manager of mining, and his general theory of business administration, called Fayolism, forms the backbone of modern management. In fact, some of the terms he used, I'm sure, are familiar even to people who don't study management. The core belief of Fayol's universal management theory is that although organizations have different forms and objectives, all organizations basically function the same, and thus, successful management principles can interchangeably be used among different organizations. There are 14 of these principles, and these principles are the following. First, division of labor, wherein every person in an organization needs to be assigned and trained to specialize for a particular role. Second, authority, wherein the right of a superior to give orders must accompany responsibility. Third, discipline, which states that discipline, obedience, and respect is needed for the organization to do well. Fourth, unity of command, wherein each employee should directly report to and receive orders from only one superior. Fifth, unity of direction, wherein everyone in the organization, despite having different activities, must be aiming for just one specific goal. Sixth, general interest over individual interest, wherein organizational goals should always be more important than personal goals. Seventh, remuneration, which says that employees should be paid fairly according to their contribution. Eighth, centralization, which says that authority and power should be concentrated on specific people so instructions and goals do not stray from each other. Ninth, scalar chain, also called the chain of command, which means that there must be a chain of people from the lowest subordinate to the highest manager, and concerns must only run up and down that chain, and employees must only report to either their next higher superior or their next lower subordinate. 10th, order, which says that people and objects must be in the proper place at the proper time. 11th, equity, which means fairness and justice must be practiced at all times. 12th, stability and tenure of personnel, which states that people need to be given a set amount of time that they will be hired without threat of sudden unjust firing because people need time to learn their jobs, and that planning must be done to fill vacancies immediately. 13th, initiative, which states that employees should be allowed to carry out plans in their own way if it will help the organization. And 14th, esprit de corps, or you should also call it team spirit, which states that unity and harmony must exist among employees for the organization to function properly. The other person who is sometimes considered as the father of modern management studies is Frederick Taylor. Taylor was a self-made man who found so much inefficiencies in the industries he worked in, so much so that, when he managed his own team, he always sought to find a better way to do things. He saw that there was very little cooperation between managers and laborers, and that laborers were not equipped and trained to do jobs that were given to them. Mostly laborers were just given tasks and then left on their own to complete them. To combat this, Taylor used a basic kind of scientific method in solving the various inefficiencies of his workforce. What he'd do is, he'd identify a problem, make educated guesses, experiment with various methods, and eventually find the most efficient and effective way to do a job. In fact, his studies were so deep and profound that his company developed different types of shovels for different kinds of materials, and measured the amount of time it took for people to lift loads from one place to another and found optimal ways to carry those loads. The principles of Taylor's scientific management principles include developing a science for each element of an individual's work until a proper method is achieved, selecting and training people systematically to use that best method, cooperating with workers to ensure that work is done according to the best method, and systematically dividing work between managers and workers. A lot of the followers of Taylor's scientific approach of management actually developed tools that we still use today to scientifically study organizational problems. For example, Kaoru Ishikawa developed the fishbone diagram, Joseph Juran developed the Pareto analysis, Armand Feigenbaum developed total quality management. The problem with following both the universal management theory and the scientific management theory and then leave it at that is that it's frequently easy to see people as just tools or resources, like machines that need to be sharpened or optimized. Well, there are people too. That is why later, the behavioral management theory was developed. This is because managers, in their quest to practice both universal management theory and scientific management theory, started using behavioral scientists to study not workplaces but the people within it. One famous example of these studies was a study done at Hawthorne Works, which was a large industrial complex right outside Chicago. Managers there were conducting studies regarding the optimum amount of light needed for the workers to make their output. Funny thing was, no matter how much they increased or decreased the light, sometimes to extreme degrees, output seemed to not change, and in many cases, output seemed to increase when logically it shouldn't. Later, they took in behavioral psychologists to study the employees, and these psychologists found that the workers didn't care much about the illumination or other changes done to their workplace. The workers only worked harder and created much more output because they knew they were being watched. Henry Landsberg, one of the people doing these studies, created the term Hawthorne effect, which states that people will modify their behavior when they know they are being watched. There are many such theories, and there is a wealth of literature that supports the behavioral management theory. Mainly, the behavioral approach teaches managers that technology, standards, rules, although important, are still all minor. The behavioral management theory states that the success of the organization depends on the success of the people within it, and that the motivation, commitment, and well-being of the people in an organization dictates the organization's success. It is because of the behavioral management theory that we learn the studies of organizational behavior, and up until now, behavioral psychologists are hard at work to determine the factors that determine the effective job performance of people. Some of you may be thinking by now that, wait, all of these three management theories are correct. They cannot seem to be separated from each other. And you'd be right if you thought that way. That's why a more modern management approach is what we know as a contingency management theory. The contingency management theory states that there's always a right kind of management style for the right situation, and thus, managers should know multiple management styles and techniques to be able to adjust according to the needs of the current situation. In fact, what you are learning and how you are learning it now is based on the contingency management theory, because instead of learning just one style, you're taught many of them so that you can adjust accordingly later. The contingency management theory is anchored upon the idea that each business is not a closed but an open system, that conditions outside the organization will affect productivity and output just as much as the conditions inside the organization will. Also, constant practical research is very important so that the organization and its managers can properly and quickly adjust to constantly changing conditions. Third is the idea that a problem in the organization does not have a one-to-one solution, and that one single problem is anchored to a variety of different factors, and thus, the research of multiple causes must be done to address just one problem. For example, if productivity is going down in a company, contingency management theory states that it's most likely not just because of the systems or because of the science behind the work, or it's not just the behavior or motivation of the employees. The cause might be because of all of them combined. The contemporary management theory, instead of looking at within the organization, looks instead within the person. The basic tenet of the contemporary management theory states that before you even start to manage other people, you have to learn to manage yourself first. Thus, many studies and books have been published in recent decades that speak about managing productivity in the workplace. But if you squint your eyes just right, you can actually apply these concepts and principles to managing your own personal productivity and happiness. There are many examples of such books. In fact, some people might call the contemporary management theory as the bestseller management theory, because many of these theories are taught through best-selling books and authors. Just to name a few of the more famous ones: Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and The 1-Minute Manager by Kevin Blancard and Spencer Johnson. Again, these books present theories that not only give insights as to how managers should handle their organizations, but also how people should handle and, in a sense, manage themselves. So, you're studying management theory now, and assuming you'll be doing it correctly later, you can then be called a manager. There are typically 3 levels of management: top level, middle level, and frontline managers. Top level managers are the general or strategic managers who focus on long-term organizational goals and emphasize the organization's development. It is these top-level managers who set the company's general direction, design strategies, and control various resources. They're widely known as corporate managers. The middle-level managers are the tactical managers. They're usually specialists that handle a specific department or one geographical location that has just one primary concern in an organization. Their traditional role is to act as the link between top-level management and frontline management. In most cases, it is the middle-level managers who are most keen and aware regarding specific problems in the organization because they specialize in just one role and therefore know the problems within that role, and because they are linked to both top-level and frontline management. The frontline managers are also known as operational managers. They are the primary link between management and non-management employees and are primarily responsible for the organization's day-to-day activities. The task of translating the general direction of top-level managers and the tactics of middle-level managers into actual, coherent, hands-on strategies fall upon these frontline managers. But in whatever level you are in as a manager, there are roles you have to perform in various degrees. Henry Mintzberry lists these roles as follows. For your interpersonal roles, you can be a figurehead, which you become when you represent your people, unit, or team in ceremonial or civic duties. Or you can become a leader, which you become when you coordinate the activities of your people. Or you become a liaison when you act as a go-between between your team and different important people or superiors outside your team. For your informational roles, you can be a monitor, wherein you become a central hub of information that flows into your office as you watch over the activities of your team. Or you become a disseminator, wherein you transmit needed information within your team. Or you can become a spokesperson wherein you transmit needed information from your team to outside superiors or parties, bringing with you the concerns of your own team. For your decision-making roles, you can be an entrepreneur, wherein you identify new opportunities for your organization to tap or find a new way of doing things. Or you can be a problem solver, wherein you identify solutions and take action for problems that come up. Or you can be a resource allocator, wherein you have to distribute needed funds, labor, materials, and other such things wherever and whenever they are needed. Or you can be a negotiator, wherein you initiate give and take deals with outside parties to accomplish specific objectives. Every manager needs 3 main types of skills. Namely, you need your technical skills, which are your actual proficiency in the methods and procedures of the actual work done by your organization. You also need your interpersonal skills, which are your ability to work with and for people. You also need your conceptual skills, which are your ability to grasp scenarios, see overall pictures, and understand relationships between different parts of your organization. You will, of course, notice that the leaders you know that you admire are those that are proficient in just one of those skills or roles and are acceptably skilled at all other roles. And the leaders you idolize are those that are proficient in multiple and in very rare cases all of those skills and roles. Knowing that, it is our goal as managers to be proficient in all of these skills and roles. And if that's not possible, good in at least a few of them and acceptably skilled in all others. So, that wraps up our lesson on the nature and concept of management. Again, we discussed the meaning and functions of management, explained the various types of management theories, and explained the functions, roles, and skills of a manager. Next lesson, we'll talk about the firm and its environment. I am SHIBA, your Senior High Introductory Business Assistant. Thank you very much for watching.